The Nintendo Switch 2 is here, the reviews are in, and one or two of these will surprise you. From one massive first-party hit to a surprise third-party port, these are the 10 highest rated games on Metacritic so far for the Nintendo Switch 2. Besides one game, I have ignored any of the simple upgrades that would otherwise be on this list, such as Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. If you're wondering what's actually worth playing on Nintendo's new console according to the critics, this is a list you need to see. Let's get started. Kicking off this list with a Metacritic score of 82, we have Hogwarts Legacy. Yes, this was released on the Switch 1, however, it was an absolute mess. Don't get me wrong, I was impressed they even managed to port it over, but it was bad. The visuals were blurry and too dark, the pop-in was horrific, and the open world was decimated into lots of small instanced areas with too many loading screens, which themselves were far too long and occurred at every new zone. To top it off, the game's aim of sticking to 30 frames per second fell flat. The world was massively edited by removing buildings, scenery, NPCs, and a whole host of art assets. I felt that with such big changes being made, that this could be considered a new release for the Switch 2. The upgrade completely reinvigorates the game and is one of the biggest indicators between the hardware of the Switch 1 and 2. The visuals, whilst not perfect, are so much clearer and detailed, the load times are greatly improved, and the world is fully open without any instance zones. Next up is a remaster that was a surprising yet welcome launch title. With a Metacritic score of 84, Bravely Default does very little to push the boat out, but is an excellent turn-based JRPG from Square that manages to remain fresh and relevant whilst looking and running beautifully on the Switch 2. Minor quality of life changes were made to modernise the experience, and the unique Bravely Default combat system still feels strategic and satisfying. The changes made improved the user interface, added a dash and heal all button, along with the ability to fast forward combat and conversations, and the option to scale the encounter rate. It's your typical heroes restore the crystals, but quickly evolves into a much deeper story with twists and philosophical undertones. It does get repetitive in the mid-game, but persistence pays off with an emotionally rewarding ending. Up next is another remake, also with a Metacritic score of 84. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 is exactly what you'd expect, and it's great. Following the success of the remake of 1 and 2, this edition brings excellent HD visuals, new playable characters, and of course brings back that incredible soundtrack, which is an absolute banger. Whilst some small changes in the missions were made, this is without doubt the best way to experience these two classics. Now let's just hope that Underground 1 and 2 get the same treatment. Coming in at the number 7 spot is Cyberpunk 2077 with a Metacritic score of 85. The definitive edition is arguably the most ambitious Switch 2 software to date. It took a few years, but Cyberpunk has finally found its footing and the Switch 2 version is shockingly solid. With Phantom Liberty included, the game runs far smoother than anyone ever expected. The load times are quick, the city feels alive, and the performance holds up in both handheld and docked modes. Critics have praised how the game now lives up to its original promise, and I would argue this is the most ideal way to play Cyberpunk 2077. At number 6, also with a score of 85, a gaming franchise I've never played, Yakuza 0. If you've never jumped into the Yakuza series, Yakuza 0 is the perfect starting point, and the Switch 2 version makes it easier than ever. Set in 1980s Japan, you'll switch between two protagonists whilst unravelling a criminal conspiracy. The action looks brutal and is the most praised aspect of these games. The story is dramatic and the side content is fulfilling. The critics' main praise centred around the buttery smooth combat and how well this port holds up visually. With barely any load times, this is a no compromise port. In 5th, with a critic score of 86, is Deltarune Chapters 1 through 5. A rich, heartfelt and hilarious role-playing game experience, critically acclaimed for its clever writing, branching choices and turn-based combat. Years in the making, Deltarune is finally complete and lands on the Switch 2 to rave reviews and a cult-like following. Critics unanimously praise the ever-evolving combat, the dark narrative undertones and gripping soundtrack. Mario Kart World, the launch title of the Switch 2, comes in at number 4, also with a critic score of 86. A brilliant game that is as much a victim of Nintendo's new pricing structure as it is the brilliance of its predecessor's breadth of content. It is the most complete Mario Kart launch package to date, yet it feels underwhelming to play coming from the definitive edition of 8 with over double the playable tracks. But give it some time and Mario Kart World will get there. I just feel with all the drama surrounding the price and hardware leap, more was expected. It is still a great game and a great evolution for the franchise, it's just a victim of its price and circumstance. Critics tend to praise the clean visuals and the direction of the changes, but there are questions regarding the empty open world and the lack of free lap circuits, and of course, the price. Stepping onto the podium in third place is Street Fighter 6 with a critic score of 87. Fighting games on handheld systems used to feel compromised, but not anymore. Critics have praised this uncompromised portable version with tight gameplay and buttery smooth 60 FPS combat, whilst feeling indifferent about the story mode where the frame rate is capped at 30 frames per second and is quite jarring going back and forth. But until a new Smash Bros game is released, this could hold the mantle as the best fighting game for the Switch 2. A massive surprise at number 2 with a Metacritic score of 89 is Split Fiction. This game came out of nowhere from the developers of It Takes Two and has amassed critical acclaim. This cooperative, multiplayer-only action-adventure offers stellar platforming, great narrative progression, and unrivaled, mind-bending creativity. I ended up ordering this by mistake, and it is personally my favourite game I have played on the Switch 2 so far, and is without doubt one of the most creative games in years. And unsurprisingly, rounding off this list is of course Donkey Kong Bananza. This hugely lauded game sits on the throne with a Metacritic score of 91, and for the most part is well deserved. Players were sceptical at first, but upon learning of the Odyssey developers' involvement and then playing it on release, critics have raved about the majority of the game and its mechanics, from its progression to its destructible terrain and clever use of it, and the level design. The main critiques have been the eventual repetitiveness of the gameplay loop, which I personally didn't encounter, and the frame rate drops experienced in the cluttered areas, which was inevitable given the scope of the game. It is an excellent game and by far the most ambitious Donkey Kong game ever made, but for me it doesn't quite top Tropical Freeze. But with the smooth, expressive animations and deep levels packed with secrets, it does come close. And that is Metacritic's top 10 highest rated Switch 2 games with some caveats. Which ones are in your library? Have any surprised you? Drop a comment below and tune back in to weekly videos for more Switch 2 content. Until then, take care. I'll see you around.